I want to bring in trial attorney and legal analyst Misty Marris now. Misty, good morning. I've got some legal whiplash here with this case, and I would imagine folks at home do as well. Help us make sense of it.
Yeah, absolutely, Marnie. So much has happened in such a short period of time, but it's important to remember exactly what happened here. This all related to procedural issues. So the Supreme Court was asked to step in and say whether or not an emergency stay was the right thing to do in Texas. That's the Texas federal court. The Supreme Court, the majority said, it's not our place to make a determination about this right now. It's the wrong time for the Supreme Court to be asked to step in. Now, the dissenting judges, what they said was, regardless of that, this is going to create absolute and utter chaos at the border. So now this gets kicked back down to the Texas federal court. And I think rightfully, Marnie, because that idea of creating chaos was certainly true, the Fifth Circuit has said, let's put a pin on this. Let's put a stay in place while the merits of the case are going to be argued. And those arguments are happening today. So that's really what happened. This was all procedural. We have not even dug into the actual merits of this actual proposed law and whether or not it's going to pass constitutional muster.
Right. So understanding SB4 is important here. So walk us through how the ruling would work and what this plan does, essentially.
So right now, the court is going to hear the substantive arguments. And the arguments relate to whether or not Texas can actually enforce its own immigration law. Can it make arrests at the border? Now, the counter argument that the Biden administration has made is that it's not for a state to have immigration laws in place. That is a federal law. And so federal law is going to overcome whatever the states do. So that's the dichotomy here. And the decision is really going to relate to federal versus state powers. But as we saw, depending on the way that this ruling comes out on the merits, certainly something is going to have to be done about logistics. So if Texas is successful, what does that mean? And how do we avoid a chaotic situation? That could all be a part of the implementation of the law. Now, Marnie, we shouldn't hold our breath, though. Whatever happens, whatever side is not successful, the merits of the case will now go up to the Supreme Court. So it will be for the Supreme Court to make that determination about who runs the immigration law. Is it the federal government, or what powers do the states have on that front when they are a border country?
Right, because a lot of states are paying attention. Cities have been overrun by migrants that have been shipped there, either bused or flown to cities, and they're wondering, can our local police step in and enforce the law? And a lot of states as well, Misty, have said, well, the federal government's not doing anything, so it's up to us. So ultimately, this is a big decision for the high court. At what point might we see a resolution on this? It certainly doesn't sound like today.
No, it's not going to be today. It's going to be down the road because, again, there's going to be appellate issues relating to whatever comes out of the arguments and ultimate decision in the Fifth Circuit. So then it has to go back up to the Supreme Court, and there it's on the merits. And Marnie, you raise a good point. It's not an all or nothing necessarily. There could be some compromise. The question is, where is the line between what the federal government can do and what can the states do with respect to how it's impacting the states themselves and what their powers are? So the immigration law, it's a federal law, but where can the states go up to that line in order to enforce their own laws relating to public concerns regarding immigration? So it's a very, very complicated issue. And Marnie, to answer your question, we're not going to see resolution anytime soon. It's going to be months before we actually see clarity on this issue. Yeah. The question will be, what happens is this stay in place on this law during that time period so that there isn't a question mark about the rights and regulations between the federal state government and how it impacts immigrants that are actually crossing the border.
Yeah, there's this tug of war, and I guess maybe I'm naive to think that there should be a common resolution, right? Both carry some burden to solve this in a compassionate way. Misty, thank you. You helped me at least process what's happening in my head. As always, good to see you.
Thank you, Marnie.
Okay.